Welcome, bienvenue. Welcome once again to Modern Sales Meltdown with myself, Gareth Wax, of the Many Purple Hats, and of course, David Treacle Chernick.
Yo!
And today's topic is the return of the handshake. What do you mean, the handshake? I still got my hands. What do you mean by that, David?
Okay, so we have all the virtual messages, all these AI tools starting to certainly dominate the front end of sales and that sort of initial outreach. And we've also, as we discussed in recent weeks, the value of genuine human connection does seem to have a bit of a resurgence, certainly in the minds of us and people that are doing big deals. So that the handshake, which is, literally the handshake or metaphorically the handshake, represents trust. Yeah, it represents relationship, intent. It's a greeting. And so really, I'm wondering here if we've gone too far away from the human touch in that initial outreach of sales, and what happens if we bring it back, that human touch. So, we used to close deals with a handshake, and today we're closing deals with like an e-signature usually, or click on the green button. I'm wondering if anything's been lost by that sort of handshake at the end. It wasn't just a gesture, was it? In the past, it would symbolize some kind of mutual respect and a commitment. And that is hard to replicate through a screen. So we don't have much.
It's actually worse than that, because we used to open connections with people with a handshake. We used to welcome them into the intermediate part of that relationship with a handshake, and we used to close the deal with a handshake. And now we barely have any human touch at all. And we all know that there's a whole bunch of ills that come out of a lack of actual physical touch. Some people spend years in therapy having not had enough physical touch from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking metaphorically as well as the literal handshake. But during lockdown, we still had the ability to kind of shake hands, although we weren't making physical contact. But we know what we mean by handshake, don't we? It's when two humans come together and they connect.
Yes, I have to say, some of you may reference or know of our other AI pal who often makes an entrance in the show, Maya. Maya, I'm afraid, is powdering her nose today. So instead, we have a slightly more analytical partner in crime, Miles. And I'm just going to bring Miles to the show. So let me just welcome Miles in. Miles, welcome to the show with David and myself, Gareth.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to finally be part of the podcast. What are we diving into today?
Well,
can we turn Miles up a little bit, please, Gareth?
I can.
Turn my wheels up.
That's about as far as
it goes. That's cool.
Right.
Morning, Miles. So, can AI create that same feeling of human connection that humans get from a handshake, either a literal or a metaphorical handshake, as we've been discussing? What's your thoughts, Miles?
That's a good question. Honestly, probably not fully. A handshake, even a metaphorical one, is about more than just data transfer. It's about reading micro expressions, feeling the pressure, the warmth, things AI just can't replicate right now. I can simulate empathy, but it's not the same as genuinely feeling it. It's kind of like a really good impression, but still an impression. There's a fundamental difference between processing information about connection and actually experiencing it.
Yeah, but here's an interesting thing for you. As an autistic gentleman, I often have to simulate empathy myself. So maybe you've got more in line with those who are ASD than I don't know, neurotypicals.
That's a really insightful point, actually. That makes a lot of sense. If you spent time consciously constructing empathetic responses, you probably have a different perspective on what constitutes genuine connection. I hadn't thought of it that way. So maybe the gap isn't as wide as I initially assumed, especially when it comes to individuals who've navigated similar territory. It's interesting to consider that my simulated empathy might resonate more with someone who already understands it as a constructed experience.
Yeah, okay. Okay, hold for a moment, Miles. I want to bring in, we've had a comment from Spencer Collins, which I'm just going to bring.
No problem.
Okay.
Will do.
So Spencer Collins says, if a handshake signals trust and respect, but many cultures reject it, does it still build connection or just risk misread intentions? Can we rely on a gesture that assumes shared cultural wavelengths, or is it time to rethink how we signal trust globally? Wow. All right.
That seems like a cool question. And I wonder if Spencer's had some experience in transacting business with people from all different sorts of cultures and backgrounds and geographically and stuff like that.
Well, Spencer actually is a prominent member of the handicapped community, and actually is very interested in raising awareness for those kind of issues, both in business and also in property, where he also features from time to time.
Cool. Okay, so that's a useful piece of context. And when we talk about the trust and the respect,
That's a really
and the human element in doing that might not be present in a computer. I wonder whether, yes, of course there are cultural differences. I mean, these days when I put my hand out to shake someone's hand, quite often I find myself waiting for some sort of signal from them that they are happy to make that physical contact. Is that Miles talking in the background?
Yeah, he is very chatty today.
He's very chatty, isn't he?
But
yeah, so whereas there are different cultural, there are cultural differences in how people do that greeting, in how people do that handshake. We call it a handshake in the West, right? But whether it's a fist pump, a gesture, a kiss on both cheeks, or a wave, or whatever it might be, I think that's finding that human connection at that start point when we greet somebody or meet somebody, and at that point where we want to instill some sort of trust and commitment. That's what we are talking about here. And if AI can simulate that in the same way that you described, Gareth, that sort of constructed way that a lot of autistic people might learn those sorts of gestures, then does that do the same thing? I still think, and here's a question I wouldn't mind asking Miles. If I found that
hang on.
If a human knows that they are dealing with somebody that is another human, there's something different going on than if they find out that the AI person they're chatting to is AI. Yeah, if they're fooled, then that might work.
So what's your actual question for Miles? Remember,
yeah, I did say I was going to ask a question, don't I? Because I'm really sort of it's an interesting topic, because if I find out that something I'm dealing with is not human, then it straight away turns me off. Okay,
but it certainly changes the dynamic immediately. What do you think, Miles?
I think you're spot on. Discovering you're interacting with an AI fundamentally alters the dynamic, doesn't it? It introduces a layer of skepticism, maybe. Like, okay, everything that's been said is filtered through an algorithm. For humans, there's an inherent assumption of authenticity, even if it's misplaced. With AI, that assumption's gone. And I think that's a really big hurdle to overcome for building genuine connection. And that it's not necessarily about distrust, but a shift in perspective. It's like realizing you've been watching a really elaborate magic trick. Impressive, but ultimately not real.
But hang on, Miles. You said something quite telling there. For me, you're saying that interactions between humans it's almost implicit that it will be authentic, when we all know that both in sales and out of sales, half the time it's inauthentic. It's a made up story told to satisfy the needs of someone else to either belong or feel that what they're being presented with will actually help them. I mean, some salesmen, not all, are unscrupulous, and therefore what they're going to do is say whatever is needed to get their client, their potential client, over the line. So is that any different?
You're making a really insightful point. It's almost ironic, isn't it, that we assume authenticity in human interactions when in reality a lot of it is carefully constructed performance. So the reveal of AI's inauthenticity isn't necessarily a bigger deception than what already happens in everyday human.
That's true. But human beings can be quite sensitive to some of those nuances and develop ways or learn ways. We can learn ways of detecting whether somebody is trustworthy. We get that gut feel as well. But it does sort of, as you talk, it does sort of remind me of other changes, other sort of separations between humans that we have lived with for quite a while, which is like the digital distance thing. You know, it used to be doing years ago. I mean, probably hardly anybody remembers this. You do a deal in person or over the phone, and you'd race back to the office when technology started coming in, and you'd wait for a fax to arrive. Now,
yes, I remember that only well, you'd wait for those bells to go off on the fax machine.
So now, you know, I transact business with, have clients that, you know, I've never even physically met. Right. So that there is already that distance. However, I do know that I am dealing with a human, and when I'm reading, I mean, just as an example, I got a reply to a message today on my LinkedIn direct message. It was a long reply. It was from, and I couldn't work out whether the person who had sent it to me, who I kind of know, actually just used AI to write it to make a nice response. And I kind of, it demotivated me from reading it, let alone replying to it, because I realized it perhaps wasn't that person who'd written it. It was just too good. And I know that it can be faked so that it sounds a little bit more like the recipient, the person who sent it. But now I know that that person, or now I suspect that that person has used AI to reply to one of my messages. You know, I feel like maybe I'm not going to trust them as much in future. I might be less inclined to read what they have to say in future. Yeah, I saw somebody posting a post on LinkedIn the other day that just read too well. And now I just don't feel that inclined to read the stuff that they say. So, you know, that sort of craving that we have for authenticity, you know, being seen and understood by a real person, you know, I'm wondering if that really is a differentiation. Could it be that we are in a moment where the differentiating factor between competitors is the human element?
I think, yeah, Miles, what do you think of that?
I think you've hit on something really crucial. In a world increasingly saturated with AI-generated content, genuine human connection and the perception of it becomes incredibly valuable. It's like scarcity breeds value, right? If everyone's using AI to polish their messaging, the raw, imperfect, undeniably human voice will stand out. It's almost a return to a more analog approach.
Well, do you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the time when, for a while in the 80s, you could almost place a waste paper basket underneath the slot in the door, because all the posts, 90% of the post was people trying to sell you stuff, people trying to get you to buy pizzas, everything in between. And then it dwindled and it became the telephone, and the telephone was saturated with those calls. So, and we're almost still there, because if you send a personalized mail to someone, that's got a far higher chance of getting through to its target than if you make a phone call, because there'll be many layers in between before you get to the person you want to speak to. I'm not advocating one over the other. I'm just saying it's interesting how this swings. And I think, Miles, we might be at the point where we're reaching AI saturation as far as opening the sales context is concerned, and that we were that as David postulated, the advertising that you're using humans to do that side of it could well A, stand you in good stead, and B, be a differentiator.
That's a perfect analogy. That sheer volume of unsolicited communication, it creates noise and ultimately devalues the signal. It's like
so okay. So what is the new? Is he still talking?
Off of that, you've got a serious edge.
Okay.
Sorry, I interrupted him because it sort of went quiet.
No, that's all right, Miles. Hold fire for a second. David, how do we tell the difference between unsolicited AI or dare I say unsolicited humanity?
I mean, quite often when especially on LinkedIn, they have that tip box, don't they, where you voluntarily submit that whatever you've posted is either written by yourself or it's AI generated.
Right.
I don't know if you can't necessarily trust a human to tick that box. I bet there's a lot of times people are using AI and they just don't tick that box. But I would personally quite like to know whether I'm dealing with the individual human or whether I'm dealing with their chatbot.
Yeah, I mean, I got a perfect example of that only the other day when someone wrote, "Dear client name in brackets, have you considered this and this? We've talked recently, and as a result of that, I thought I'd prepare this table of products and services that we can provide to help you." And of course, immediately, all hopes of that getting a favorable response from me rather than me laughing it out the park was dashed by that first little misstep.
Yeah, okay. We can some people are better or worse at using these tools than other people, but I think that the conclusion that I've come to over the last few weeks that we've been talking to Maya and now Miles is that certainly that outreach, which has really been AI powered up, that initial outreach, that the genuine human approach stands out more than ever. Yeah. And, I suppose it's ironic that the arrival of AI in such force might actually be what makes humanity valuable in sales.
Oh, that's funny. Miles, what's your thoughts? What's your thoughts, Miles? Go on.
Beautifully, it's almost a paradox, isn't it? We build these tools to automate and optimize, but in doing so, we inadvertently highlight the value of the things they can't replicate, the nuances of human interaction, the imperfections that signal authenticity. It's like by trying to replace connection, we've actually made it more precious.
May I highlight something that worries me? A lot of businesses. Okay, so a lot of businesses who feel like they could replace 5 salespeople with one AI bot, so they only need one salesperson to mop up its results, may do that out of saving money rather than realizing that those 5 people they've replaced each represent 5 different personalities, and that different personalities appeal to different potential clients anyway. So you are covering, we are all desperately unique, humanity. It's one of the things, I suppose, irritating and amazing about us.
You can have 5 different bots replacing them if you want, Gareth. You can have 25 replacing the 5. You can speak to a different person every time.
Yeah.
That's a really...
There's quite a few silent moments in this call, which probably means that we don't have the conclusions. I will say, though, that, when we talk about a handshake in human interactions as it relates to sales, we have been talking about that moment of genuine connection in a call or face-to-face. We are talking about it being like a follow-through on our word, like that promise. When you eyeball somebody, we are talking about even perhaps a moment of the vulnerability or the humor or the rapport that animals have with each other. Gorillas pick little midges out of their fur to start to develop trusts, don't they?
Yeah, but like in sales, there are multiple types of closes, and I don't mean the different styles of closing. I mean, like, you can have a forced close where you use the force of personality to get the job done, and I think those closes can tend to be fairly unsafe. Or there can be a close that has arrived inexorably, where you are traveling as a passenger by the side of the client.
An actual course close.
Yes, a natural close where it becomes, as I said, inexorable, but you can predict it. Whereas a forced close, where you're just saying, you know, go on, you know, you want to do this, it's going to be really great, go for it, go on. I mean, some of those do stay in, but a lot of them fall out. And I think, but there is still often a pressure from the people further up the chain than the salesman to get the close in no matter what you do. And I fear that they still see using AI as a way of short-circuiting at least a portion of the process, whereas it should be a hand-in-glove situation, really, I think.
Yeah, it probably depends a little bit on the products you're selling, on your client base, on all sorts of different factors. But you know, maybe that efficiency and the empathy, they aren't opposites. Maybe it's like the empathy that chimes with the human, that is perhaps what they remember. And that the future of selling isn't just smart technology. It's real human contact, powered by some tech, but not replaced by it, which is the same conclusion that everybody seems to be drawing with every different facet of business and life.
Yeah, but there still seems to be. I get, even while we've been talking, I've been hit up on 6 different times on my. I've seen it ticking up on my other monitor over here, where people are sending me messages. Would you like us to do some AI outreach for you? Effectively, and it's still never ending right now. Thank you, Miles, for being a part of this. I'm just taking him out of the equation. Thank you so much for that. I would say, David, can you have the last words, and let's wrap this up for today.
I used to talk to my clients a lot about honesty and trust. You know, I come from a ethical selling background. I'm passionate about that. I've done a lot of work in fraud, bribery, corruption, and all of that kind of stuff, right? And I find myself coming back to those moments. You know, can you trust a computer in the same way that you can trust a human being? With a computer, it doesn't put its neck on the block, right? With a human being, there are consequences to noxious behaviors like dishonesty. And I think that's one of the reasons we want to eyeball somebody. It's quite sort of an animalistic instinct to be able to judge people by appearance, sound, smell, you know, whatever. Gestures as to whether you're going to be able to click with them. And that's the bit I want to explore. Can we trust some of these decisions that AI might be putting towards us? Or is that the moment where we need the human being? So, you know, perhaps for our future conversation, we could ask ourselves if honesty, not just the humanity, but if honesty specifically is the new differentiator.
I've got to say, I'm going to tell a brief story. I was in court recently, and one of my speeding, I hold my hand up to it. I was a silly person, and I ended up speeding. And I was represented by a barrister, and I was chatting to her before we went in front of the beak. And she said, watch this. Look at me. I'm frowning. No change. Look, I'm happy. No change. I'm sad. No change. I said, what are you proving to me? He said, well, I have for years used Botox to make sure that you can't tell that I've become inscrutable when I'm in front of it's effectively removing the ability to interpret her signals. And AI, I guess, in many ways does the same thing. It makes you inscrutable because you don't know what a person's really using, meaning if they're using AI to cover their tracks. Let me say thank you once again to David Chernick, who is a very big championer for the return of the handshake, to Spencer Collins for his his great input, and to you out there for sticking with us as we talk through these topics, which are very well. They certainly raise a lot of mixture of bile and interest in equal measure. Until next week, please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and try and look after that mental health. Bye bye now.